Now that we're at the start of training camp, I'm going to give my NFC playoff predictions. I wrote a blog about this on the Hashmark Sports website. You can check that out. I also did my AFC version of this on this TikTok account. You can check that out as well. But let's get started. For this one, I'm going to start with the 7th seed, and I have the LA Rams. The Rams heavily overachieved last season, and I think they have a chance to compete for the NFC West with the Niners. But ultimately, I think they come up short. Their only real loss this season was Aaron Donald. And of course, that's a huge loss for them as he retired. But when you add a bunch of guys and barely lose any difference makers, that's really huge. They added guys like Trey White from Buffalo, Jonah Jackson from the Lions, as well as Darius Williams from the Jags, and drafting Jared Verse in the first round. All four of those guys are going to have near immediate impacts for this team. The O-line is going to be a ton better than they were last year, and they of course still have dominant skill position offensive players. And I think their defense is going to surprise some people. At the 6th seed, I have the Green Bay Packers. Whenever you think the Packers aren't going to make the playoffs, they always end up making it like last season. And last year, they even won a playoff game, upsetting Dallas in the first round. They swapped running backs this offseason, getting Josh Jacobs and losing Aaron Jones. They didn't really add many other guys outside of Josh Jacobs. And they lost guys in their O-line like Runyon and Bakhtiari, and Devondre Campbell, their linebacker. So I think they may not be as good as people think, but I still think they're going to make the playoffs, and their offense is just getting older. I think they're going to be a solid team. At the 5 seed, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I have the Cowboys coming up just short of winning the division and getting the top wild card spot. This is mainly because they didn't have much of an offseason whatsoever. They lost guys like Dorrance Armstrong Jr., Tyron Smith, as well as Stephon Gilmore. And their only real adds is Ezekiel Elliott, who they brought back, and Eric Kendricks, who they're hoping has a good year this year. I do, however, love their draft pick of Guyton in the late first round. I think he ends up being really, really good for them. But overall, I think the Eagles just improved more, and I think they end up winning the division. But I think we see another dominant year from the Cowboys offense. The defense is the only questionable part for me. At the 4 seed, the first division winner, I have the Atlanta Falcons winning the South. While I think Kirk Cousins is a little overrated and a little overpaid, I think they're still going to win a very weak South. Tampa Bay and New Orleans are pretty mid, and we know Carolina's probably going to be pretty bad. They really just needed a QB that they could surround around their great offensive weapons like Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. They also picked up Rondale Moore, who I think could be a sneaky weapon for Kirk Cousins. I like Raheem Morris as a new head coach. And while Penix was a questionable pick in the first round, in the second round they got Rucororo from Clemson. I think he can be a good D tackle for them. They should easily win this division. At the 3 seed winning the East, I had the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles were really good in the first half of last season, and they completely fell apart because their secondary was horrible. And Jalen Hurts has some decision-making issues. And Sirianni's a questionable head coach. But I love what they did in the offseason. Similar to a team we're going to talk about a little bit later, they had a huge weakness in the secondary, and they completely revamped it. They used their first 2 picks on Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell and Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean. Both these guys were mocked in a lot of drafts to go in the first round. I think they're both going to be great for the Eagles. They also were able to maintain guys like A.J. Brown and Jordan Mailata. They lost guys like Hassan Reddick and Kevin Byard. They took flyers on guys like Devin White and Mekhi Becton. And they got Saquon Barkley, who I think could be dangerous in this situation. Very similar to Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, this is a great situation for Saquon. I think he's going to be super successful. And for that reason, I have them beating out the Cowboys and winning the division. At the 2 seed, I have the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to be just as good this year as they were last year. But I think the NFC West is going to be a lot better than it was last year, especially with guys like Kyler Murray coming back. Their biggest losses this offseason were Eric Armstead and Javon Kinlaw. While it's tough to replace those guys, they got Malik Collins from Houston to replace Eric Armstead. They also did a good job improving their linebacker and edge core, bringing in Devondre Campbell, Leonard Floyd, and Yetur Gross-Matos. The Ayuk situation is very interesting, and it looks like he's going to get traded. But regardless, I think this offense should still flourish, and I think they do good enough to get the 2 seed. But at the 1 seed, I have the Detroit Lions. Similar to the Eagles, their biggest weakness was in the secondary. They had a ton of injuries, and they weren't that good in the first place. But they went out and completely revamped that secondary. They traded for Carlton Davis, who was cornerback 1 in Tampa Bay last year. They drafted Terrion Arnold, cornerback from Alabama, in the first round, trading up for him, and cornerback Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri in the second round. Adding these guys to a core with Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, and Emmanuel Mosley is going to make for a pretty good secondary, and I think their defense as a whole is going to really turn heads this year. Their run defense was already one of the best, if not the best, in the league last year, and they brought in DJ Reader from Cincinnati, who's going to be great on the inside. Him and Ali McNeil are going to be a dangerous duo. And after losing Jonah Jackson to the Rams, they go in and get Kevin Zeitler, who was a Pro Bowler from the Ravens. They, no question, are going to have the best O-line in the league going into next year. And guys like Jameson Williams, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta are all going to get so much better going into next year. I think this team is going to be really dominant. There's a lot of time between now and the playoffs, but I feel pretty good about this list, and let me know what you would change.